Hello and welcome to Music Worth Buying. My name is TJR. I'm a musician and a music writer.
And my name is Robert Kinsler, and I'm a music writer and a musician.
And so it's that time. We're approaching the end of the year.
Yeah.
Everybody does their lists, right?
Their favorite albums,
Yes.
their favorite reissues, their favorite whatever, right?
And we want to prove that we're just as imitative as everybody else out there. That we have no sense of originality.
Originality be damned.
So yeah, we're doing our top albums for the year. We're now on musicworthbuying.com. You're going to actually do a much larger list.
Yeah, I'm going to post, and I'm looking here because it's in the draft form. I'm going to be, the way it's planned now is I'm going to write my 25 favorite albums and write a little bit about them, and my 15 favorite reissues. It was such a strong year. Like, I know we both loved the Bad Company reissues. There were some amazing reissues. There was the Beatles 1+.
Yeah.
You know, probably the most amazing. Continental Drifters, the Dream Syndicate, all these great little joys that I discovered this year. So I'm going to have that so it'll all be one post, but I will lead it off with my favorite albums of the year.
Okay.
You know, and hopefully maybe you have time to somehow get yours down there too.
We'll see. I'm hoping I can. I'm not making any promises though. But we are going to talk about just our top 5 each.
Right.
We're going to talk about 5 albums each, and just for time constraints on the show here.
Yeah, exactly.
And now, which of us is going to start here?
Did you want me to start?
You may, yes.
And what I'm going to do on my list is I'm going to run the albums in alphabetical order, probably by the band.
Okay.
So with that said, why don't I kick off with one of the first bands you're going to see on there, first albums you're going to see, and that would be Blur. And I'm even wearing their shirt here, and the Magic Whip. And that was Blur's first album in many years. It was an album that most people didn't even see coming, and it was such an amazing album. It took the British band's music so forward. I mean, they've always been great, but you know, it's one thing if you're consistently doing new albums and you're kind of, you know, think of like the classical Beatles prototype. You know, you start with the more simple things like Twist and Shout, and you get up to Day in the Life and I Am the Walrus and all that kind of stuff. Blur's kind of done that. I mean, they've always been great, but they came back. You know, they've broken up for a few years. They've come back with this album, and it's just amazing. You know, it incorporates world music and Asian music and Britpop and all these different things that they do, and electronica, and it's like, but it's very cohesive and a very dynamic and exciting album, and I think everybody now is like, yeah, keep it coming and stuff, you know.
I'm going to ask you a question about that. Now, we recently talked about that album. You brought it on the show just recently in a recent episode. And how do you feel about the fact that it is something that you've only just recently experienced, or do you feel any trepidation about that because you think, oh, I'm really into it right now?
You know what? I'd say I'm more, when I featured it on the show probably 3 or 4 months ago, and maybe it was that, I'm more excited by the album now, I think. And there's been albums in the past where they were on my list, and then over time, maybe I don't even really listen to them. Or there was a album that didn't get on the list, and I go, God, in retrospect, if I could go back in time, I would put that that album on there.
Okay.
And it's just you know, and there's some albums that I'm really struggling. Okay, who's going to get in that top 25 list? Like, God, I like that, but am I going to like it 5 years from now? And that's a tough thing. I mean, even like we were kidding around, or like my top 5 albums today they might be 4 or 5 of those albums might be different ones if you ask me next week.
That's true.
You know.
True, yeah. And something I'll say about that album and its music, because I only heard the 2 tracks that we played on the show, and at the time, I was like meh about the first one you played on the show. I liked the second one. Then when I went home and edited the show, I listened to it again while I was editing it. I have to listen to it, make sure I give it find a good spot to put 25 seconds of the track. And my reaction was, of course, meh. But as I listened to it the second time when I was editing, I was like, this is way better than I thought it was. I actually liked it so much more the second time. And I was kind of embarrassed now that I was kind of meh about it. And so I do want to say, you know, sorry about that.
Yeah.
No, but I really did like it a lot more the second time. I thought, well, this is way better than I remember it being.
Yeah.
So I've only heard those 2 tracks, but I will say that much about it.
Yeah, it's a very, very good album, and it's sad it hasn't got more traction here in America. Any of our viewers in Europe or Mexico or Australia, anywhere else in the world where Blur is a huge band, they're going to get what all the excitement's about. Unfortunately, I think a lot of audiences here, you know, they just they aren't gonna, I'm not saying they won't check it out, but if you have Spotify or Palladium or something, try to listen to a little bit of the Magic Whip. Give it a chance. I think it is a fantastic album.
Okay.
Now, how about you? Because I want to hear what let's get on your list too here.
Well, I sometimes feel trepidatious about bringing up an album that I've only that's come at the end of the year.
Right.
Because, you're more excited about what you heard right now versus what you heard 10 months, 11 months ago.
That's a good point.
And that can be prejudice how you feel. But there is no way I'm not going to put Hamilton in my top 5. This music is just way too much of an accomplishment. And Hamilton is starting to grow a really strong, maybe right now, I don't know if I should say cult following, but a really strong and growing fan base. Even though this is not a band, it's not a group or an artist, it is the soundtrack to a new musical.
And this is this the original Broadway recording?
This original Broadway cast.
Yeah. Because it's funny, I was at a Barnes & Noble the other day, and it was at one of their locations where they don't have much music. They had Adele's new album, 25, and they had Hamilton.
Yeah.
They had a lot of vinyl, but I mean, as far as like the little CD rack, and I recognized it because you had talked about it on the show.
Yeah, it's just an amazing album. Like I said, it is a musical about the life of Alexander Hamilton that is very strongly influenced by hip hop and R&B, but then there are also strong elements of classical Broadway as well, and of course pop. But this music is such an accomplishment. I have a feeling, the more I listen to this as time goes on, it's just going to keep growing with me, and next year I'll still be very excited about it.
That's great.
That's my prediction right now.
And that's a strong endorsement.
I don't think I'm going to waver from that.
Yeah, great.
So let's hear about your next one.
Okay, and this is, once I get past Blur, I have some definite favorites. So these ones, I'm going to call them, like, I'm going to repeat myself here, but these are my top 5. This one I know will be on my top 5, and that's Florence and the Machine's third full-length album, and that's How Big, How Blue, How Beautiful, and that did come out earlier this year, and just a great album. I've since seen her since I've heard the album, I've seen her a couple times in concert. That even brought the songs more to the fore, and I think that helps implant them in your mind, makes them kind of even more significant when you've seen an amazing show where those songs that you loved off the recording, then you hear them live and they take on an additional life. But I just love this album. I find it, it's not that it's radically different than maybe her last 2 albums, but it's just these songs, each one of them is so powerful. I mean, I know people, there's so much hype and everything about Adele. It's when it comes to whether Florence Welch or Adele, for me, Florence Welch, I just find her music more compelling, more nuanced, more substantive. I mean, I think she is just a fantastic artist, and it is great that I do hear, I think she has got a lot of attention here and everything, and obviously, headlining at Coachella and stuff doesn't hurt. But she's just, I think there was a lot of expectations that this needed to be a great album, and it was. She delivered.
Good. Now, with me, with my top 5, some of it is the albums that just turned me on. Other times, it's more like the accomplishment. Now, with Hamilton, the music really turned me on, and what an accomplishment. Now, my next one was like I almost didn't include it, which is not to say I don't like the album. I do like the album. And that's going to be Sound and Color by the Alabama Shakes. I do like this album, don't get me wrong. But part of the reason why I'm bringing it on this list is because of what I feel they accomplished. Because I don't like every song on this album.
The ambition on this album is amazing.
That's
it. I'll never forget what you talked about on the show with Vintage Trouble. Like you said, Vintage Trouble's album was great, but it was kind of like their first album 2.0 or something like that. Whereas this was like the band almost reinvented itself.
Yeah.
And
they took this quantum leap.
Kind of like what Blur did. It's like you expect, they're just going to try to have the Blur sound, and just come out with a group of songs, maybe try to get some radio airplay. That was not what they did at all, and that's what I'd say with the Alabama Shakes album too. And when I saw them live, again talking about Coachella and stuff, wow, they're just mind blowing for such a young band, and it's kind of like they're riding their own trail.
To me, the difference between this album and their first album is kind of the difference between, say, A Hard Day's Night and the White Album. That to me is the difference.
It's very dramatic.
It's this very dramatic difference. It's this quantum leap It's as if the Beatles had like gone from that to that,
Yeah,
without any
it's
of
like
the
they skipped Rubber Soul and Revolver and all that.
Yeah, just went straight to that.
Went straight to that. Yeah.
But yeah, so while I don't like every song on this album, I just can't stop admiring the ambition of this album. And so for that reason, and I do like the album, don't get me wrong, but for that reason, I have to include it here in my top 5.
And I really, I relate to what you're saying, especially with that. And it's so easy today just to say, we've had success in this thing, let's just keep doing that.
Yeah.
And it really blows you away that in this age when it's so difficult to have commercial success and sell records or sell enough downloads to make it worth your while, to do what they did, I think is it's more than admirable. It's almost brave,
It's really brave.
And that's well stated. And what I'm going to do here is the next couple albums I'm going to talk about aren't necessarily, they don't show that kind of ambition, but I do want to talk about one that I did recently, and that's Jeff Lynne's ELO. I think after so many years away, and for Jeff Lynne to do what he did, to come back with this really amazing album called Alone in the Universe, to me, this great collection of songs where he's really recaptured something what he did, and basically he plays every instrument on it, writes all the songs and stuff, and I just love the album. It's still relatively new to me. I've only been listening to it maybe for 3 weeks, but I think that is an album. Like I said, is it the greatest album of the year? Probably not. But is it one of my favorite albums? It definitely is. I just love the songs. It puts me to these are very serious times we live in. Yet this is an album that's very reassuring and makes you feel comfortable and kind. You know what I mean? It makes you feel good, which I think in maybe the world needs a little bit more of that now.
Oh, yeah.
When even most of the Christmas albums are kind of melancholy, wistful, and make you want to slit your wrists or something. Here's an album from a true icon who's a survivor. And Roy Orbison's gone, George Harrison's gone, some of his cohorts from the Traveling Wilburys, and he's done such a great album that celebrates life, and it really celebrates his love of music when he first discovered music 50 years ago, or more than 50 years ago. It's just a great album, and it's so neat to see him back.
Very good. Yeah, and I enjoyed the album too. Never been much of an ELO fan, but I really found myself enjoying that album right from the beginning. So yeah, I can definitely understand what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And now, so I'm going to go ahead along that trend. And once again, you're doing this alphabetically. I'm not doing this in any order at all. I'm not numerically. This is not 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
This is in no order because I can't even begin to do it numerically.
That's what I'm saying. It's too hard to do it.
Yeah.
Other than the Blur album, it's tough for me to whittle down the other ones.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried to do a top 10 list this year. I go, there's too many good albums I love. It's going to have to be 20 albums at least.
Wow.
Such a good year.
So I am going to just talk about just albums that just made me feel good. And for me, one of those, there's 2 albums that here on my list that really made me feel really good. And one of them I have to include because I've just enjoyed it so much is, Mark Ronson's Uptown Special. And of course, this is the album that has the big hit single, that co-features, Bruno Mars on it. Uptown.
Uptown Funk, is
Uptown
that?
Funk, yeah, there we go.
Uptown
Yeah, Uptown Funk, excuse me. Sorry, my mind blanked for a second there. But this entire album, from start to finish, is an absolute blast. It's an absolute party. Every track is great. This is just such a fantastic piece of great retro 70s vibe, funk, rock, pop. And like I said, it just knocks me out. That track deserves to be a huge hit single. I'm glad that it is. I'm glad that so many people are enjoying it. And every time I hear someone listening to that track, I say, by the way, that entire album is great. And really? Is it? How come they're not playing it on the radio? Because radio doesn't care about introducing you to the album.
Yeah.
They just want to keep playing the hits over and over again.
Yeah.
And I tell them, go get the whole album. The album's great. The album's great, And I tell that to I hear so many casual music listeners listening to that song and I tell them, by the way, that whole album's great.
Yeah.
Get the whole album. You're going to love it. I recommend it everywhere I can go. So yeah. So definitely this definitely makes my list just because it's been so much fun to listen to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very good. And so this is where it gets tough for me because there's so many albums. Like I said, it was such a great year, and some of the albums I've got to listen to them, but I haven't got to spend enough time with them. So the next week or so, I'm going to be trying to revisit these albums and immerse myself. But one I definitely want to highlight, and I know because we went to the concert together, was Pugwash's "Play This intimately because I love their album too. And it's funny, I talked about Jeff Lynne's ELO. Pugwash is an Irish band, and they're basically, probably their primary influence might be ELO. And again, I just love this band. I think that they're, it's weird. You don't think of a band coming up today to kind of recapture that and do it so well, but it's not like they're a retro cover band.
Yeah.
I think they have their own songs, their own emotions, and I think they've you know, and they're a band that I've just discovered like over the last year or so, and I'm just a big fan. And that's again, like I said, this list to me here is about my favorite albums, meaning the albums that I think I see myself playing over and over again beyond 2015, and that's why I put them on the list.
Oh, good, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, it's your list.
Exactly.
You know? It's your list. You can pick what you want. Now, I'm going to shift gears here. I'm going to talk about an album here. It's called Short Movie by Laura Marling. I don't have my physical copy of the album here, so we're going to post a picture right here for you of the cover. This album, I had heard a previous album by Laura Marling, and I thought, wow, she's really good. But this album absolutely knocked me out, and I brought it on the show, played it for you.
Right.
I know you like the tracks that I played.
Yeah, I definitely did, yeah.
I was completely knocked out by this album straight through. This is a very, I find it to be mystical in the same way that I sometimes find Led Zeppelin mystical, if that makes sense to you. And I find it transcendental in the same way that I find listening to Led Zeppelin transcendental, if that makes sense to you. And the songwriting on this album is absolutely fantastic. This is an extremely evocative album that is really meant for just stop everything you're doing. You know, this is not a party. Stop everything you're doing. Just sit, listen, let this music just move through you and just experience each moment of it, you know, second by second.
Yeah.
And it's been a while since I've heard an album really make me want to do that.
Yeah.
Just enjoy every little sonic nuance. In fact, probably the last time I felt that strongly was with the Fleet Foxes album, Helplessness Blues.
Exactly.
Yeah. That one, you know, probably that's the last time I felt like I was in love with every single sonic nuance and moment of the album. And the same thing with this one, Short Movie by Laura Marling. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, wow. So now it's my turn again. Now this is, and like I said, it's getting tough for me because from here, there's so many albums I enjoyed, but to say, God, who gets in the top 5, that is definitely tough. But you know what I'm going to do is I am going to say, and it's somebody you introduced me to, I'm going to say Lindi Ortega, and I hope I'm Faded
great.
Gloryville. That album, you know, there's such a quality about it. Like we were talking about, you know, how maybe Jeff Lynne isn't, or Pugwash are not quite as wistful, and they can be. There can be melancholy, but this one, there's a real sense of depth for such a young performer. For her to, it sounds like she has a weight of the world kind of on her shoulders at times, but there's still such a celebration of music, and she's such a dynamic artist. And again, this is one of those artists that I also had the opportunity to see her live and was blown away by the power. You know, she's not an overly large presence or anything, you know, but there's a real authenticity and richness to her, kind of like what we've said about somebody like Michael Ubaldini, that it would blow me away that you can walk into a coffee shop and see somebody that great, with those that amazing songbook like he has, you know. But she's even probably younger than Michael and hasn't had maybe some of the health challenges he has. But yeah, but that album's great, and I haven't listened to it since earlier this year. But when I was doing my list, that was like one of the first albums that I thought of. And I'm going to be listening to it again this week, but it's just very, very powerful. Yeah, you know,
that's
almost
good.
like it's comparable to like somebody like Springsteen or Michael Ubaldini or somebody, just an amazing artist. You know,
and I was thinking of, before we finish the show, asking now, were there any albums that each of us brought on the show that ended up having a big influence on the other? Yeah. And since you
I was so glad, and because you introduced me to her, I think that was the reason I sought out to see her. I think I was planning on it anyway. But yeah, I go, you know, it's a very good album. And matter of fact, because of that, I had one of her earlier albums that either I hadn't listened to in a while or something like that. So I went back and re-listened to that one again, going, wow, she's a terrific artist. And I know she's someone, I think you said, that hasn't had the commercial success she deserves. Probably somebody, again, like a Michael Ubaldini or some of the other artists that aren't as well known that we've tried to champion on the show.
Well, good, good. And you know, since you've brought that up, this is not on my list, but I do want to mention here one artist that you did introduce me to on the show. The album, All Your Favorite Bands by Dawes.
Oh, yeah.
Which
yeah.
you've brought Dawes on the show before.
Yes, I have, yeah.
And I've been like, oh, okay, that sounds nice, but I haven't really been, that, like, okay, I'm on board now. But All Your Favorite Bands, first of all, when you played that title track on the show, I was just simply sold hook, line, and sinker. And then I started listening to the album, and that album made a strong impact on me. So I do thank you very much for bringing it on the show. That really had a strong influence on me. I really have enjoyed that album. You have begun to turn me into a Dawes fan.
Okay,
with
good.
That album.
Well, that's good.
So I do want to thank you for that.
Well, and you've definitely turned me into a Lindi Ortega fan too.
Now, but now that's not on my list. Okay, but I do want to bring it up just in relation to that. So the last album I'm going to bring up, and once again, this is not in any particular order, is an album I never got to bring on the show.
Oh, okay.
But I did review it solo. And I'm bringing this one up for the same reason that I brought up the Mark Ronson album. It was just too much fun. It was just too much damn fun. And that is, Guitars and Microphones by Kate Pierson. Of course, from the B-52s.
B-52s, yeah.
And this was her first ever solo album. And what a solo album it is. Track for track, it's just outstanding. I mean, like I said, does this album change the world?
Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
Same thing for the Mark Ronson album. Does it change the world? No. Is it a whole hell of a lot of fun? You're damn right it is. Yeah, whole hell of a lot of fun. And so I'm glad I'm actually, since I didn't do it on the show, I just did a solo review at the time. I don't know why I never got to bring it on the show. I would have liked to have gotten your reaction.
Sometimes it depends on our shooting schedule and when we get to albums and things. There's some other factors that I know have blocked me from maybe getting on some really good albums on the show. And we try to correct that through time. As we can, but it is hard. There's a lot of good music coming out.
So I'm sorry I never got any of your reaction to it, but yeah, just a hell of a lot of fun. And so for that reason, that's my number 5 pick. Once again, this is not in any numeric order. This is in no particular order. This is just the 5 right here. So I want to mention that.
And before we forget, let's make sure that everybody out there that if you have some favorite albums of 2015, or even if they're reissues like the Beatles 1+ we mentioned, or the Bad Company ones that we recently featured, please let us know about that and share that with other readers, and we'll keep it going.
Absolutely, yeah. Please.
I'm always amazed every year. You go, I wonder how this year's going to be, but every year we're pretty excited by a lot of good music.
I think most of the times, for as long as we've done this, and there was the old channel, of course, which is gone now, but for the most part, we've always ended up saying, wow, there was a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
There was one year where I felt like it was kind of a slim year. Yeah. It felt like a kind of a weak year. I don't remember what year that was.
I don't either. Yeah.
But I remember just one year only where I felt like it was weak. But yeah, every year I look back and think, well, actually there was a lot of great stuff. And I don't know what's going to come out next year.
And the last thing I want to say about this year is, and I know we've talked about that, with Blur, with the Zombies, with Squeeze. I mean, this was Duran Duran. This has been a year where some of the veteran artists came back with some of the strongest albums of their career. And that's, I think, what set me off about seeing the one list where none of the veteran artists were mentioned. And I thought that was unfortunate because, music builds on each other. But just because, the example I always give is like Giuseppe Verdi was 80 years old when he wrote one of his greatest ever operas. Just because he was an old man didn't mean he was continuing. And with that opera, he was continuing to explore new ground, and that was a very sophisticated type of music. So there's no reason to discount, like a New Order, like a, Colin Hay or a Peter Case had a good album this year. All these these veterans, and then there's a lot of great new things like Hamilton, like you mentioned, and so I think that's the thing is go out and discover music and try to have an open mind and explore as much as you can.
So now, before we wrap this up, though. Is there anything? I have one thing I want to talk about, just briefly. One other album I want to talk about.
Okay.
But is there anything else that you want to say about this year, about any other releases?
Not
one
really.
thing you want to bring up? There's one thing I want to bring up, and it gets back to that thing I said at the beginning about being trepidatious about an album that you hear right when the year is coming to a close. And last year we did this show. Of course, we did our top 5 or top 10, whatever we did at the time. And at the time, right when we had done it, it was I never got to feature it on the show, so I featured it on our top 10 list. Well, I just want to bring up this album because it's really good. I want to get it in while we still have time. And I mentioned Tell 'Em I'm Gone by Youssef.
Oh, yeah.
And I brought up that album. I said, now, I didn't get to feature this on the show. We're doing our top 10 list. This album, I've only just been experiencing this for a week, but I do want to mention it and recommend it to you all. And we played a track, I think. And we talked about it like we would on the show. And then we did it also along with our top 10 list. And I think you may have done an album too.
Yeah.
Possibly. But it had the unfortunate aspect of having been me not being able to hear it till maybe a week before we did our top 10 list. So it was too late for me to really consider it at that point. And I said, but I think this is going to be a really great album. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I got this at the tail end of 2014. This album has only gotten better for me as I've listened to it in 2015. I feel like this is one of my top albums for 2015 because I didn't get to hear it until the end of the year.
So it was new to you.
So it was new to me, but it was released in 2014. So had I had a chance to experience it at the beginning of the year or earlier in 2014, it would have made my list. And it certainly would have made my list right now because this is one of the best albums that I have listened to all this year.
Well, good.
And so I do want to bring it up again and give it special kudos.
Yeah.
And do check this album out.
Great.
So that's the one last thing I want to mention.
Yeah. No, that's an important thing to know too. That whenever you discover an album, it's new to you.
It is. Yeah. And and sometimes I wonder about that. We've always said, if you've never heard it before, it's new to you, and therefore we should talk about it, even though. And I think in the early days, if we discovered an album from way back in the day, but we've only just discovered it now, we've brought it on the show, say, hey, I'm excited about this right now. And maybe we need to get back to that more.
Either that or do like classic, like Lost Classics or something. Yeah, because if you're only discovering them, meaning you, me, or whoever, then it's Lost Classic. If you and if you found it, then that's all the better. Okay. So, well, great. Well, good show. Yeah.
Thank you.
And a good year, right?
Yeah, good year, I'd say so. So we want to thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't done it. We thank you for sharing the show here on social media. My name is TJR, and you can check me out at my website, tjrmusic.com, and listen a little bit about yourself, too.
Well, my name is Robert Kinsler, and you can read all kinds of my articles and reviews and posts and everything at musicworthbuying.com, and you can read my work at ocregister.com, musicnewsnashville.com, and of course at desertstarweekly.com as well.
And also you can join me at my personal YouTube page, youtube.com/TJR the original, and join me there as well. Subscribe there, where I'm going to be where I do live music performances, talk about other things as well too. And so once again, everybody, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, and we'll see you soon.
Take care.